Hey, thank you, everyone. I'm pleased and totally honoured to be joined here by Greg and Ben, who are both fascinating. We've literally been talking about 20 minutes before I clicked the record button about just comics. I'm really happy to get these guys on and to chat about what they've been working on, which is I'm talking like absolute nonsense. I apologise, everybody. But yeah, so Ben is an editor and writer with Tales from the Cloakroom, which is the official comic anthology for the Scott Snyder comic training class, the Scott Snyder. And he's got 10 years of experience as a freelance writer as well. And Greg is a UK-based writer participating in the project. They've been working with Scott Snyder, and they're going to talk about some of the great things Scott's been teaching them. And just the idea of this anthology, which to my understanding has got 60 plus other creators, including, as I've just found out, very like the last 5 minutes, includes Honor Vincent, who is in the most recent 2000, or is in a recent run of 2000 AD. So it's a massive class with some massive names and some massive ideas. So yeah, thanks guys for joining me.
Thank you for having us. It's great to be here, Jeff.
Have I lost you?
I'm still here. Ben seems to be still here.
Awesome. Yeah. Before we start blathering about comics, obviously, I can still hear you guys. It's fine. Before we start blathering about comics, I've got I'm very fortunate that you guys are beer drinkers. So you guys have prepared beers for the podcast. I was wondering if we want to talk about that. So Greg, what did you bring?
Yeah, so I brought Squawk Brewing Company, their Alley IPA. I've had a few times before. I actually live pretty close to Beer Moth, a big sort of like craft brewing store in Manchester. So I'm, so this one's very, very good, and I'll be enjoying it tonight.
I like it. You're Manchester right now, aren't you, Greg? Despite they've got there's some awesome breweries up in Manchester. Is it? So yeah, that's cool. It's cool that when we get folk from other places to bring like a local beer, it's cool. Ben, what did you say you brought? You're in Orlando, Florida, I believe.
Yeah. I didn't mean to cut you off there, but so I've got 2 beers. So this is my first one. This is called Fate's Reflection from Tactical Brewing in Orlando. It's a microbrew near my house. They make some really wonderful beers. These are former military. They own the microbrew. Great labels. This is a Florida Vice. I already said that. And then Run Julius Run, which is a New England IPA. So we'll try this one, maybe halfway through the pod, and hopefully I'm still sober enough to go back to work after this.
I like the Mars Attacks guy on the label there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's why I picked it up. I don't even like IPAs that much, but I got it for the label.
Nice.
Yeah, I was on a road trip with my friend last year, and we were talking about. He was like, "Do you know what film I watched recently, and it doesn't hold up?" And I was like, "No, like tell me." Like I couldn't guess, and he was like, "Mars Attacks." And I was like, "No."
That one doesn't age well.
Apparently it hasn't. I was like, I don't think it's supposed to be. He's like, it's just so. He was like, it's laughably badly acted, and I was like, I think that's the point, though, isn't it?
That's the point. Yeah, I mean, it's a play of like 1950s like film serials. Like it's supposed to be very overacted.
Yeah. I think I remember I saw that one in the theater a long time ago, and it's got obviously like schlocky, horrible special effects, but on purpose, right? You can like see like wires and stuff. But I don't know. I liked it. I thought it was fun. I haven't watched it since then.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch it again. I don't think I've seen it since the 90s, but yeah. I've actually been since I used to live in Florida, and one of the things that I really enjoyed there. In Tampa, there's a brewery called Cigar City Brewing. I don't know if you've ever had anything by them, but they have High-Lie, which is interesting, which is an IPA that kind of tastes like more like a stout than an IPA.
I've had many a Cigar City beer. Yeah, and I've been to the brewery. I did a brewery tour in Tampa a couple of years ago. Yeah, so they have good beers. I don't like the High-Lie as much, but they have a brown ale or a brown lager or whatever that I really like. And they have a couple others that are really good. There's one called Night Swim that's very stouty. So yeah, they have some good beers.
I had that one. Yeah.
There you go.
Awesome. Yeah. So shout out to Cigar City Brewing.
Yes, I'll write it down. That sounds amazing. So, so yeah, did you guys know each other before you got involved in the comic writings class, or did you meet there, or what is? Yeah.
Yeah,
I
we
think.
had. Go ahead, Greg.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah. Oh yeah, no. I don't think we had come across each other on the comics internet at all before. And it was kind of. I guess it was sort of the call came out. I don't know if it was after this, maybe the second or the third class, where the idea sort of started permeating of like, why don't we all get together and do an anthology? But I don't know, Ben, so you being more on the editorial side, could you speak to that?
Sure. So the class started last August. I think that was class number 1. And then Joe Schuster, one of our editors, he had the idea to make an anthology, right? He really wanted to make his first comic. And he was like, let me grab some other people, students from the class, and we'll make comics together. We'll pull them all together in a book and publish it. And so he started grabbing people, grabbed me. And, I said, hey, I'll help you out on the project side, like organizing it and editorial and stuff if you need help. And we put out a call for interest pretty early in the class. And then that's when we got folks like Greg. And, we have 19 students who are part of the book. But also, if you take the whole creative teams, there's like 40 plus creators, artists and everything who are involved with it. So, it was a long project, but that's kind of how it got started. It was very like organic. You get a bunch of creatives together, they're going to make something together, that type of thing.
So, do you have a remit for the anthology? Did you decide to? Is there a theme? Is there a theme that runs through each story, or is it just avant-garde? Or?
Yeah, there is a little bit. So it's multi-genre. We didn't put any restrictions on genre, so you could be anything: sci-fi, horror, western, slice of life, romance. We don't have a romance story, but if you wanted one, we could have put it in there. 6 pages or less. That was another rule. It had to be professional quality work, right? We put a lot of emphasis on that because it has Scott Snyder's name attached to it, so we wanted it to be like top quality.
Yeah, of course,
and then, the only other rule was that there was sort of like a motif through line, and that was a jacket. And where the jacket came from was Scott's label is called Best Jacket Press. That's his like personal indie label. And so Tales from the Cloakroom, jackets, that's where you put a jacket in a cloakroom. And then the through line is each story had to have a jacket somehow. So either as like a plot driver or an Easter egg, right? Like my story, it's basically an Easter egg. It doesn't it's not part of the plot. And Greg's, yours was, remind me.
So there's an element of my story which is a recurring photograph where the family that feature in the story are all hanging out wearing jackets. So it's in this one photograph that keeps appearing.
That's right. That's right.
So so not a plot driver, but it is part of the part of the story.
Yeah. So the jacket, it was like a nod to Best Jacket Press and Scott, but we didn't want to hamstring any of the stories by it had to have a jacket as a main part of the plot, right? We thought that would be too restrictive.
Yeah.
So we kept that kind of open, but each story's got a jacket in it somewhere.
And other than having his jacket present in the comics, what sort of other input did Scott have in the process? So has he supported you guys through it?
So no. So the book is completely indie and totally bootstrapped by our group, our crew.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So we didn't ask permission, to make an anthology at first. We just decided we were going to make one. We're going to fund it. We're going to put it together. We're going to raise the money. We're going to do a Kickstarter, all of that. Right. And so it was like, not only was it like part of the class, but it was like part of the educational process for a lot of the writers. Cause some of our writers had never written a comic before and made a comic.
Yeah.
Some of them had never written a script. So, partly educational, partly like we wanted to produce a work that was coming out of the class, like the essence of the class. Yeah. And later in the process, we spoke with Scott's editor, and we said, hey, look, we're making an anthology. Is there any support you can give us? And also, can we use Scott's name? And Scott was, very generous, and he was like, yeah, you can use my name, like, go for it. Like, obviously having Scott's name attached to the project, there's like a lot of value in that for marketing,
Of course,
SEO, things like that. And he very generously lent us his name very early in the process before seeing any of the finished work, right? Like the work could have been crap and he wouldn't have known, at least early on. So yeah, that was a major reason why we needed to have all the stories be high qualities, because Scott's name was attached to it and we wanted to like make him proud.
Yeah, and it's not just his name either. It's he's been really cool with like tweeting out about the anthology, posting about the Kickstarter. Obviously, he went on a different live stream with you, Ben, a few days ago. So like he's been out, like he's been a big part of the promotion of this, and it's kind of amazing, and it's just incredibly cool because he didn't have to do any of this. Like, it's we're part of his class and we all met through the class, and that's cool. But like he didn't, he's a big comic star. Like he's a and he didn't have to do any of this. So like it's been really cool to see him, participate in the promotion of this. And yeah, it's been awesome.
Yeah, the other consideration we were able to get is our top premium reward on the Kickstarter is a signed book. Right, that's our most expensive reward, signed by Scott, and he did donate that. He was like, "Yeah, I'll sign like a bunch of books for you. I can make that happen." So like they've been extremely supportive and helpful and encouraging, and it's been great. It's been great to like be a part of that. And one of the things I'd like to see is for the anthology to live on in years past after we're done with the class or whatever. Like if there's like a year or two of the anthology or a year or three, like I would be very fired up and proud, that that's something that we all founded and it lives on.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. So within the editorial role there, you mentioned that like there was a requirement for a sort of professional level work. What's the feedback been like that amongst your creators? Now, the only reason I ask is our podcast is about to put an anthology out, and we have quite a similar process to you. We left things open to our creators to bring stuff in. I admittedly didn't say anything about to any contributors about like the work quality, and the quality overall has been, well, apart from maybe my contribution, everyone else's contributions have been like professional and look outstanding. How did was there any kind when you were suggesting sort of those frames for making the anthology, your anthology? Did some of your creators find that quite challenging, or was there more support?
This is a great question. So in our initial messaging, so we have a side Discord for just the anthology for like our group. So in our Discord, which if people don't know what a Discord is, it's like an online learning environment. We posted early messaging that was like professional quality work, publication quality work, right? Like work with good artists, experienced artists. Like you can't be amateur. We didn't have like any hard like goal signposts about that. But when you see professional quality work, it, like what it is, you recognize it. We had to turn a couple pieces away because the artwork or the story or both weren't up to snuff. And I want to say at least one of the stories, they redid their artwork, right? They got another artist because the first pass, it wasn't there. Like it was not professional enough. So they hired another artist, redid all the pages, and the new artwork is fantastic. Like it ended up being fantastic. The artwork on Greg's story, amazing. Like it looks absolutely terrific, so it was just kind of like, it when you see it type of thing.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I wouldn't say it was a completely smooth process. Like we did have to work with a couple of creators to get it right. And like I said, in one instance, we had to tell somebody like, no, we can't take this. So that happens. That's like a hard conversation to have, but you got to have a standard, and you just kind of work through it.
Did you have
for me,
Oh, sorry, Greg. Please.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, yeah, no problem. Yeah, for me, so I've self-published 2 comics in the past, but this is my first time actually working with editors. And like, even though like, you tend to like build up this whole thing like, oh, I know what I'm doing. I've put out comics before. They've been well received. And just getting the feedback, it's like, oh yeah, that's, here's a very silly mistake that I made that I should have caught myself. But yeah. But yeah, Ben, Chris, and like all the different editors there have been incredibly good with like, even I think even like the best of us, the best of the writers have been really well served by being able to work with this team. Yeah, catching things we never would have caught, suggesting changes that we never would have thought of. It's been a really great learning experience from that side.
Yeah, Jeff, do you have other editors on your anthology, or is it just you, or are you the editor?
I'm the, I don't know, supreme leader. No, I haven't given myself a title or anything, but I'm overseeing the project, and we're trying to, I don't know if this is just reflective of Scotland right now, but it's a much more sort of it's a much more sort of socialist kind of process. In that I'm kind of throwing a lot of suggestions out. Ultimately, I'm not massively comfortably, but I'm having to put my foot down a few times and in situations that I never considered I would at the start of this process. But what I am, and the reason I asked about your question about sort of art quality and stuff like that, because as I say, it hasn't been an issue I've had, but I found as an editor, sort of my roles were, I don't know if this is more reflective of my job or that, but it was a sort of much more pastoral role within the process, having to support creators with. I had one of my creators who was just worried that his work wasn't of a standard, and it's without mentioning their name, it's one of the highlights of the comic. It's excellent, and it was just a proper crisis of confidence on the part of the creator, and it was supporting them through that rather than like I haven't had any. I actually have had no editorial issues with things like grammar in boxes or funny artwork. It's been people management. It's been supporting people to believe in themselves enough to put the work through.
Yeah,
I don't know if you had the same, Ben, where people are maybe just a wee, particularly with first timers.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, the people side of it, that was a big surprise to me. This is the first book I've ever edited, and I have some editorial experience in other arenas, like sports writing. I have a bit of a sports writing background, but I've never edited like a book with creative writers, like fiction writers. The people management and the relationship side is huge with something like this. That was a surprise for me. And there was a lot of what you just described where it was just helping a young novice, sometimes a novice writer, through their creative process, giving them confidence and giving them positive feedback, and helping them to just develop their story to get to the right point. So yeah, absolutely. Like there's quite a bit of that. One of the things that we wisely did on the editorial team is we brought on an editor who is specifically a story editor, right? She has a lot of experience with editing stories, and she knows just like everything about like story beats, story structure, all the nuts and bolts of comic story. And she was a tremendous resource with all of those things. Like you might have had like a great idea, but the execution and the script or the art might not have been quite there. But she was like able to greatly assist in that department. Much better than I would. Like I don't have that experience. But yeah, like everybody in the group was very supportive with each other, and not just like editors and writers, but it was like writers to writers. They were like uplifting each other. So yeah, there was a lot of like the relationship management stuff, but I think it worked out very well with our group.
That's amazing. Was this your first anthology, Greg? Was this your first contribution to an anthology?
Yeah, to a shared anthology. The first comic that I ever put out was, I guess, technically an anthology. If a bunch of stories that I wrote myself counts as an anthology. This is the first thing that I've contributed to, a work of, at least in the comics realm, work with other creators. I've done a couple of prose things, a couple of short stories, but this is the first comics anthology.
How did you find the process from somebody that's self-published to contributed to something bigger, or a more collaborative process, I suppose?
Really good, to be honest. Like I mentioned before, just working with the editors has, I think, raised my game further than what it was before. I mean, I think for a lot of creators, like the big important thing, like the greatest teacher you can do, you can have is just like create something and put it out there and just like, wait to see if it does something or fall on its face. Be able to, see it out there and not be able to change it, come back to it later, read it, and see all the things that you messed up. And honestly, having an editorial team there is kind of a similar process, because you get fresh sets of eyes, fresh sets of ears for your ideas. So this has been awesome. And having, people like Ben, people like Chris, people like Audrey, like all these different editors, like kind of looking at it and pointing out, oh, that, that piece of dialogue doesn't make sense, or, this this, this was in past tense, this is in present tense. Why is that happening? That kind of thing. Just like, you find the holes in your writing and in your writing style, and you can figure out like, is that a hole you need to plug, or is that a thing you need to explore further? And it's been really, really cool. So I've been really happy with the process.
That's amazing, man. That's really exciting. So tell me about the project then. At what stage it's at, and when, because it's you're going through a Kickstarter to have it funded, aren't you? So
yeah,
what's that?
So the Kickstarter has 3 days left. We're almost done. We're actually met all of our goals already. The initial funding goal, stretch goals 1, 2, 3. We hit all those as of yesterday. So right now we're sort of like adding to the total, which is amazing. Like with a couple days to go, like whew, what a relief. What happens after we're done with the Kickstarter is that we wait for the funds to come in from Kickstarter itself. They release the funds. That's usually up to 2 weeks. And then all the comics are done. Like all the artwork's completely done. The book's done. So what we do is we send the print job off to our printer. They send all the books back. That usually takes a couple of weeks. And then we'll do fulfillment, right? And we're going to do manual fulfillment. So like we're sending a box of books to one of our editors' houses, and he's going to actually put them in boxes and ship them. And then people will start getting their books, relatively quickly, like in like a month or two, say 2 months after the Kickstarter ends, which is really nice. There's a couple other like little moving parts too. Like we have a set of books we have to send to Scott himself to sign. That'll take longer because Scott's just a really busy dude. And we have some goodies, that we have to stuff into the boxes. So we have to get those printed, like stickers and art print. And there's one other thing. Oh, bookmarks. Yeah. So a lot of moving pieces, but like, the finish line is very much in sight. Like we can see it. And I think that the hard part is basically done, getting the Kickstarter completed and getting it funded, which has been a wild ride, by the way. I never, ever expected our Kickstarter to do as well as it has done.
Yeah, it's been amazing.
Was that your first day? Was it your first time going through using Kickstarter as a process, Ben? Have you done it before with your own stuff?
Never done it. Yeah, I've been a backer for a couple of years. I've backed a lot of projects, but I've never been on the back end of it, administering and managing it. Very complicated, a lot of work. Have you done a Kickstarter before, Jeff or Greg? Either?
I've just finished. I've done 4. Just finished my 4th one, and about to do a 5th one starting next week. Actually, I don't know. I'm a bit of a Kickstarter. I'm a bit of a Kickstarter geek. I quite like hearing about other people talking about it, because it's it's, like you say, there's so many moving parts. It's so complicated, and there's so much to learn. That's why I asked. I was like, oh, it's interesting to see. So what was your experiences with this being your first Kickstarter?
Man, I don't know if I do another one. Like it has been just a tremendous amount of work. Like the marketing you have to do, the marketing is like, that's a huge component of it, right? Like setting it up on the back end of Kickstarter, that's no big deal. But you do have to do a lot of work for things like marketing copy and cutting graphics and things like that. But man, the marketing you have to do to get eyeballs to it and get people to sign up is just like, it's like a part-time job. What do you think?
I've done.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I've done 3 on my own before, two of which were successful. And like the failure one was the sort of the big like learning experience for me. Is like all the basically the promotion tends to be the big part of it, the big thing that you're always missing. And like I wouldn't know where to start with trying to promote a thing as big as Tales from the Cloakroom on my own, because that's like I've done my own little Kickstarters for my own little projects, but like trying to get something that size rolling, like everybody involved in that, running that Kickstarter page needs to give themselves a round of applause, because that's an absolute that is a beast, and I'm really proud of all you guys for managing to pull that together. But yeah, it's been really cool with being able to see all those stretch goals get smashed, all the people who've been sharing it, and just seeing it take off so well. We got projects we love from the Kickstarter company. They gave us that designation on the site, which pushed us a little further up. Yeah, it's been really cool to see it take off. But yeah, I'm not not in any way, shape, or form jealous about the fact that I didn't get to run it.
Man, I know. Jeff, what do you think? Like, if you're a Kickstarter geek, do you like doing them?
I enjoy certain elements of the process. What I'm enjoying this time around is the preparation time. Whereas before, I've not had much because it's been my own project, or it's been because it's been my own, and I've been only a contributor. I haven't really put as much thought into the Kickstarter as I am at the moment. And obviously, because there's like 13 contributors to this anthology that we're doing, having to really think about like how each creator is represented, and what's being said about each guy, and making sure that they all feel like their voice is being heard appropriately, and their contribution to the anthology is being recognized. Mm-hmm. It's totally different. I quite enjoy. I don't know. I'll look up Greg's back catalogue after we come off air. But I stick to really small. By the time I go to Kickstarter, the project's finished. And I know there's different approaches, especially about a Kickstarter geek. I know different creators approach it differently. I know some creators will maybe start the project and they'll use a lot of their Kickstarter funds to finish off the artwork, for example, or to. Whereas by the time I run my projects, I'm just trying to recoup some of the publishing. You know what I mean? But everything else has been paid for, and it's been produced by that point. So because there's that bit that you have to fill in when you about risk and about like what are the risks to the project, and I like to make sure that there is almost no risk, like literally
right, minimal. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's always been my strategy. Yeah, it's always been my the one time that I didn't do the get all of the art already paid for and done before launching the Kickstarter, that was the one that failed. So that, basically since then, everything that I've tried to do has been make sure the art is done. Just take that all as like sunk costs. All that is So yeah, get the art done, get the coloring done, get the print file already, done. It's like I learned how to do print files myself, learned how to letter myself, and so yeah, when I run a Kickstarter, I'm effectively just trying to pay for the print run, and if I manage to get over that, then like good, because I can at least take that as a I've managed to recoup some of my costs for the art.
Yeah. So I have a little secret or a tidbit I can tell you guys. Greg, you might find this really interesting or not. So early on in our process, we were worried that too many people were going to submit or want to submit to the book. And we'd have to find a way to cut down on submissions because, there's hundreds of students in the class. There's maybe almost 1,000. So we were like, we can't take 200 stories. Like, we just can't do it. Like, we need to find ways to cut that down. So we made the decision very early on. We were like, okay, we're going to just say upfront, to get into this book, you have to front the money to make your comic. And then that, if you can do that, that means you're ready to be published, right? You're ready to be a pro. And so that was one of our sort of unspoken hurdles that we put out there. And it worked. Like, there's just a lot of people who just flat out don't have the funds to make a comic right off the bat. And you guys both know like how much comics cost to produce, even if it's only 6 pages. Yeah. So, like, I wish we could have done it some other way, but it's like School of Hard Knocks. If you're going to be an indie comic creator, at some point you're going to pay for your own comic. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like I said though. It's only like 6. It is 6 pages. Like it's not like you're asking people to like self-fund a 48-page graphic novel or anything like that. Like 4 to 6 pages. I feel like that is a fair thing to ask people to front the money for, at least like at an anthology level. I know other anthologies do have circumstances where they've managed to like match writers with artists or things like that. Yeah. But I think like that it tends to be standard that like if you're a writer trying to break into the comics industry and you're starting with shorts, it tends to be like, you pay for your artist. And
right.
That seems fair.
Yeah.
We tried a different process with our anthology, where a combination, like again, I tried to include as many different approaches as possible. So the idea behind ours is after, like you were saying about after publication, each of our creators will hopefully receive a proportionate representation of profit in inverted commas after printing and after postage. If there's anything left over, that'll get distributed. But we were kind of the same. We did a wee bit of matching. So like a couple of writers came to me and said, I really want to contribute, but I don't have an artist. And then a couple of artists that came to me and said, we want to contribute, but we don't have writers. So I was able to do matchmaking, which was quite interesting because I've got like what I thought was quite interesting is for example, I've got Dave Bedford, who's a comic writer in England who works for the 77, which is kind of a up and coming.
It's like an indie anthology, right?
Yeah, he's good. So he's one of the directors on there. He had a story. He was like, I've got this story. I don't think it's a fit for the 77. I don't know what to do with it. Would you guys be up for putting it in your anthology? And then I was able to get Michael Philp, who is a really awesome up and coming artist from Scotland, and was able just to say, and who'd done the same. I want to contribute, but I don't have any stories. And I was like, oh, so they've worked together. They produced this amazing little piece, which I don't think would have happened otherwise. That's kind of what I'm quite happy about. There's a few that's happened a few times in our anthology, and it's like we've got writers, and as a total comic fan, I've got like some of my favorite writers and some of my favorite artists working together.
That's awesome.
And sort of in tandem.
So cool.
It's like super bands. It's like when I don't know, when Stone Temple Pilots came out, and folk were like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah. That's terrific. Yeah, we didn't have that type of level of matching. We did have a couple instances where we matched up people on the art teams together. So like letterers with the rest of the team. We had a couple of those. We did have one where a gentleman's story didn't have colors and he wanted colors. And then we have one writer artist, right? She's in Scott's class. And she was like, I'll color your story because I want to practice my coloring skills. Like I need to build up the portfolio. So we matched those two up together. We had things like that, but nothing on the level of what you're talking about, which I think would be really cool, right? Is to match creators up and then they create this like new thing that's like really amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little difficult though, because like the talent pool is from a writing class, not yeah. So the closest you get to artists is like writer artists who are usually going to be doing their own stuff rather than other people's.
We're seeing their big graphic novels as well. What I noticed, particularly when you go to cons, you're saying they're a bit like if you're a writer but not an artist, you're maybe looking at entry into anthology, if you're a writer artist, that's when you start to notice. That's when you notice, like, when you go around the cons and people have got their graphic novels on their table rather than like a couple of single issues of an ongoing series. It's like,
Yeah,
you wrote Andrew your thing. You had that a wee bit more freedom to do that. So
yeah, for sure.
And I'm infinitely jealous of the people
totally.
who can take their stories and actually realize them. Like I spent like 4 years trying to like learn how to draw, and I can kind of make this person whose face looks like a potato. Like I'm just gonna try to hire people.
Yeah, I'm always crazy impressed, and I'll never understand how top level writer artists like, Jeff Lemire, Chip Zdarsky, like all these guys who are writer artists, and they're amazing at both. And they're like incredible artwork, and they're also like Eisner winning like writers as well. Like that just like blows my mind that they're so good at both disciplines.
Oh, totally. It's mind-boggling. There's an artist, a writer in Scotland, Stephen Ingram, who is unbelievable. He like you're talking about slice of life comics. He does these amazing, but he does everything, and like he generally is just one of my favorite guys in comics. Mm-hmm. And but he's also local as well, which means I can go out and get a drink with him every so often. Which doesn't, so I can just like sit with him and like Stephen, you do know, like I total love you as a creative as well as just a guy that I know. And he's like, yeah, I know, man.
Yeah. Is it stuff like findable? Like if I wanted to go read some of his stuff, is it out there?
Yeah, I'm trying to think what. Have you got Comic House? The Comic House app. If you Google that, it's an independent comic app. It's like Netflix for independent comics. It's how they sell it.
Okay.
House spelled Haus.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he's what
I've seen them on. I've seen them on Twitter. So yeah, I'll check them out.
Is it Steven's last name? Say it again.
Ingram, Ingran. He's got a book called Left about a young lady leaving a cult, which is like the best thing in comics. It's really, really good.
Great recommendation.
What was I going to say? So talking about Scotland and like, I noticed when you got in touch with me, Ben, you mentioned Rob Jones. So I've got to ask, how we've got kind of a running joke in the podcast about Rob, who's an absolute.
I can't wait to hear this.
How much of your anthology did he letter?
Oh, so much of it. Rob is basically like our house fig artist. Yeah, Rob's awesome. I love that guy, man. I know he's been on the podcast before. I talk to him about it, and he loves you guys. So he's personally lettered, I think, 3 of my comics, and he made our logo. So the logo you'll see on the front of the book, and he's also created a bunch of the graphics. So we tapped him early to do the graphics, and then obviously, like in our Discord, I was like, hey, anyone needs a letter, here's somebody I really like, I trust, Rob Jones, here's his contact. And he's probably got 4 or 5 stories that he lettered in the book. Greg, who did you use? Did you use Rob or Lyndon or who?
I used me.
You did it?
Well done, Greg.
Yeah, I did my own lettering.
No kidding.
That was the thing that's the thing I learned like 2 or 3 years ago. It's sort of like my first comic that I like self-published. I decided like, if I'm going to be part of this, I can't just be a writer. I want to like try to bring like some sort of value myself. So I really buckled down and I read all those Blambot like one sheets where he I have his book now too, where he sort of like goes into how to letter through Illustrator, which I'm still using Clip Studio. I need to switch to Illustrator at some point soon. But yeah, so I've been doing that. So I've lettered myself. I've lettered a couple other projects for other people, but I'm mostly just doing my own thing.
Jeff, what's the Rob Jones joke? I got to hear this.
No, that was it. Like we were
letters everybody.
Acme Comic Con in Glasgow in March, and Rob was there as well.
Yeah,
and he was standing with Colin, who's my co-host, and apparently he looked across the hall. It was like very independent comic creator heavy, maybe about 100 creators and people and traders. And he just apparently turned into Colin and went, I've lettered half of the things in this room. He's a total dude. Like, I went.
Yeah.
We did a weekend. I've met him a few times. Obviously, we've had him on the podcast as well. But we did a weekend in Glasgow in March, and we on behalf we had the podcast. We had a table and we just chatted to all the independent creators, and we're saying like we're going to the pub afterwards. Here's the pub. Here's the address. We'd really like it. We just open invited it to everybody, and maybe about 8 folks showed up, including Rob, and he's just a great guy. Like I actually showed him my piece for the upcoming anthology, and we're in the pub, and I don't know if it's just because we'd all had a couple of beers each, but he's offering me practical advice in the pub. He's like, you want to make that bubble bigger, you want to move over there, you want to remove this from this guy's face, and just like you didn't have to do it, and and then I was like, I felt almost embarrassed about it, and then obviously we'd all been drinking.
Yeah.
And then the next morning, I was walking through the convention hall with a slightly sore head, and Rob's walking the other way, and just like without saying a word, just threw his hand up for a high five, and we had like this total massive bro high five in the middle of this, walking past each other in the hall, like surrounded by cosplayers. Yeah, just like totally unexpected. And I don't know if it was just because we're both moving at pace in opposite directions, and there was no time to slow down. And I had my headphones in as well, but he just like threw it up there, and it was just like the most like shh. It was like
that's hilarious. That's hilarious. I love that story.
Like, why are you smiling so much?
Yeah, I love that guy, man. Rob's great. Like, I'll basically use him as my letterer, like for as long as I can. Like he's awesome. And you're right, he's lettered like every indie comic under the sun.
It's such a, and I know Greg will probably attest. I try to letter my own stuff, but it's really hard. And you notice when somebody else does your lettering how much better it is. If you go to a professional letterer like Rob, when you like just things that you don't think of, and you're like, oh, that looks really good. Oh, he's used a different font there. Yeah. Oh, he's moved the bubbles, and like, whereas I'm like, I wouldn't have thought about doing that, but it's a medium in itself.
There is like so this didn't come from the Scott Snyder class, but this came from Scott Snyder's YouTube, and this is one of the things that kind of gave me the idea that maybe I should try lettering myself. Is that he does a lettering pass of his scripts when he's gets the art back. He'll actually go through and he'll sort of like paste the dialogue from the script into sort of like makeshift little word balloons on the art. At least he was doing this. He had a video up on his YouTube like 4 or 5 years ago where he's doing this, and sort of like if something he wrote wasn't sort of conceptually matching with what the artist drew, or with like the way that a character looked in a scene, it would give him an additional opportunity to change the dialogue or to adjust like the way that something was written or the way that something was in there, and give him an opportunity to make it more cohesive. And that was kind of one of the things that I just decided to do, because I was going to do that. I may as well just try to letter the thing. But that was a big thing for me. Just sort of like, oh yeah, don't treat your script as being the gospel truth of the scene, because you're going to have collaborators, and your collaborators are going to have their own ideas as to. And I guess you can make the comparison of like acting. Your artists are basically the directors and the actors of your story, where they are going to be sort of interpreting your writing and putting it there on the page. And sometimes what comes out isn't exactly going to match. So it gives you an additional opportunity to change, anything that needs to be changed, so these things match perfectly.
Totally.
That's sort of why I ended up going into it.
Yeah, I caught that segment that Scott was talking about with his lettering scripts. He calls it a lettering script, where he basically does the original script where it's the art direction, and then the art comes back from whoever, and then he goes through and he actually makes the dialogue in like a separate, I don't know if it's a separate document or the same document, but he calls it his lettering script or dialogue script. I can't remember. But I tried that.
Like that.
Yeah. So I'm on my second beer. That's why I can remember. So I tried that. Welcome to the podcast. I tried that with my latest script, which is something I'm working on for like a future comic. and I kind of like it. Like I basically wrote the whole script where it's just the scene breakdowns, like this is what happens, but no dialogue. This is kind of what things look like. And, you know, I got through the whole script, and then I went back and I started adding in dialogue bits, but I was like, you know what, I'm going to wait until some of the art starts to come back. And then I'm going to do a final dialogue pass based on what the characters look like and what the art looks like. And I think I prefer it. You know, I think it's like an interesting way to work, is to wait for that layer till later.
Totally. I found I just put out a comic last month about it's a comedy comic about football or soccer. Sorry, Ben.
Right.
But it's just like a lot of the jokes were things that I would have to come back to, you know. So like I wrote the jokes on paper. I've then done all the artwork myself for my sins, and then as I've been lettering it, I'm like, oh, these jokes don't work anymore, or there's quirks in the artwork that I hadn't planned when I was starting to draw it, where I'm like, oh, actually, you know, that joke doesn't work anymore, or it's funnier if I make note of this. I'll need to send it to you, Greg, as a Mancunian. There's running jokes about there's a running joke in there about Harry Maguire, who plays for Man United.
Oh,
so.
All right, yeah, send that to me. I'm definitely I'm interested in seeing. That was one of the things that I did try to keep up with when I moved to the States, but I just started getting into U.S. soccer instead of trying to keep up with UK soccer. So, yeah, at this point, I know more about the very basically, you know, like the Portland Timbers.
So the MLS,
Major League Soccer. Yeah, so coming back here and just finding, you know, the streets running red with the blood of City fans anytime something anytime something goes wrong for United seems to be it's been interesting to see.
Jeff, when does your anthology come out? Like, I'm very curious about Yeah.
So we coordinate, or we're part of the coordination team behind. I'm going to move while I talk to you because I'm so unprepared that my laptop's about to run out of battery.
Okay.
Yeah. So sorry guys. Stop me before I get too professional. So yeah, we are doing the Kickstarter next week. It runs for a month, and then we've got Colin, one of our co-hosts. He came up with this idea last year that I didn't think was going to work. I didn't know. That's a total lie. My brain's running off. He came up with this idea that I thought was going to be a lot of work, called where we ran the hashtag Scottish Comic Book Day.
Oh, okay, cool.
And promoted. That was a smooth transition, wasn't it? Thank goodness it's editing. Yeah, so Colin came up with this idea for Scottish Comic Book Day where we were. I thought it was going to be a lot of work, but it was just an idea about putting the hashtag out and like just sort of highlighting Scottish comics. And so we're trying to get it out for that because it's the last Saturday in November is when we hope to have. It'll be for sale before then, but actually, we mentioned Thought Bubble a couple of times. Thought Bubble comes out Thought Bubble is the weekend before, so we're hoping to have it for sale there because a lot of the contributors will have tables anyway. So it'd be nice for them to be able to sell it at the convention. So
yeah, awesome. Yeah, make sure you send us a link for all that stuff. You know, I'd love to push it on our socials and put it on our Kickstarter like updates. You know, because we have like projects that we support, like we have that section, so add it to that. But yeah, man, I'd love to back that.
I mean, like you can't see it when this is going out live, like right now. I will do it as an example. There'll be like when I did that with my hands there. There'll be a thing that comes out with a link to one of your works, and there's it'll be all shared throughout. So yeah, please just send me the links to everything that you guys have done because I will there'll be images and videos printed throughout the interview when it goes up tomorrow. But yeah, so what if you guys? So you guys have got it's actually one of the cool things I've been looking at when you guys have been talking is your release schedule and your organization is quite impressive for the Scott Snyder your Tales of the Cloakroom. What are you hoping to get out at cons this year? Have you got cons coming up that you're going to be attending with this?
Greg, are you going to cons?
I have nothing on my schedule right now. I'm so I have not been going to UK Comic Cons or Comic Cons in general. So I moved to the UK in October 2020 in the midst of everything. So I've sort of not been doing any a lot of social stuff. I only recently started going back to like gigs and like seeing bands and stuff. So I'm curious about what the good cons to go to are. I sort of started to check out a bunch of different ones online. They seem to be it's a Comic Con, and then it's sort of like, yeah, it's a Comic Con. We have like the cast of Supernatural here. It's like that's not a comic. So trying to figure out like what the good Comic Cons to go to are. I know Thought Bubble's a good one. I don't know if is Edinburgh Comic Con worth attending. I don't know.
There's a couple up in Scotland. I would say it depends what you're going for. So like there's a number of Comic Cons in inverted commas that are like you say. They'll have. There's one organisation in particular who I think are called Comic Con Scotland, and they've got a couple of companies that do these big events where you can go and meet. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, they've got some high-profile guests. Like, they'll have the main cast of Cobra Kai, and they've got Christopher Lloyd and the Undertaker. And
as much as anybody else, I would love to meet. I would love to meet Giancarlo Esposito, but like that doesn't help me in my comic career.
I would say, and then you've got Thought Bubble. So Thought Bubble is regarded, I think, as the best Comic Con for comic particular. Their particular niche is independent comic writers and creators. Yeah. So they have very little. They have very little cosplay on the go. They very little anything other than independent comics, and it's a really good one. I say it's in Harrogate, which is just north of Leeds, so about an hour from Manchester. And then up in Scotland, there's a couple of conventions. Edinburgh Comic Con's a good one, but it was cancelled this year. We've got one called Capital Sci-Fi Con in Edinburgh, which is it's a charity convention, but apparently it's not amazing for. It depends what you say. I've been as a punter and sat and listened to Doctor Who's talk about their careers. I heard I've been to panels with listening to former doctors, and it's been great. But as like an independent comic writer, you're not going to get much help. Yeah. We did Acme, which is done in Glasgow, and that's pretty decent. Obviously, that's where I met Rob properly face to face, and a bunch of other independent comic guys from like North UK. So there's loads. You just have to kind of. It's just whatever you're looking for. I imagine anybody that's watching this tomorrow live right now, but obviously tomorrow night for us, they'll be firing up names of cons as we speak, because there is loads I'm obviously not naming. I think Lakes is quite good. So up in the Lake District, sort of out by, again, about an hour away from you. So like an hour on the M6 maybe for geography nerds. So, what's the scene like in Florida, Ben? I interviewed the In Symmetry guys last year. So Matt Knowles and I can't remember Steph's second name, but they have they do like a steampunk metal anthology series, which names escapes me. But they seem to be quite busy in the North Florida Comic Con scene, I think in Tampa.
Yeah,
but I don't know much
we
more about
Yeah, we do have a number of smaller regional state level cons. They're pretty small. If they get like one or two really high profile comic guests, that's like all they can pull. We have MegaCon here, which is one of the biggest ones anywhere. They get like everybody. And we just recently had MegaCon, I think a month ago. I actually didn't attend. I have attended in the past. But
right over the border in Georgia, there's Dragon Con.
Yep.
Which is one of the bigger US conventions as well.
Yeah. So for me personally, I have verbal deals in place with 3 shops. So I'm going to put the books, a couple of copies in those shops in Orlando, which I'm pretty excited about. I was very surprised at how open the shop owners were to taking an indie book. I figured like they were going to be like, no, we're not taking your indie book. Like, get the hell out of here. But they were like super cool about it. And so that's what I'm doing. We do have some writers from the class on the book who are they table a lot, and so they're definitely going to print up copies. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a print run. Greg, I don't know if you caught this, but we're going to do a print run when the campaign's over. You can buy as many books as you want at cost, so it'll be much cheaper than our Kickstarter price. And then if you want to put it at your table, take it to your local shop, sell it to your grandmother, do whatever, Christmas presents. So we're going to put that order in a little bit down the road. And so like the other writers will probably table at cons and like sell it that way, so we're pretty flexible on what we're going to do with it. Like we just started having a conversation about, can we sell this online if anybody wants to buy it like down the road? How are we going to do that? What's the solution for selling it online? So we're going to look for a solution for that. There's a couple things out there, and if either of you guys have any suggestions, I'm all ears. But that's kind of like the medium term.
That's an interesting one, Ben. You've just thrown a wee spanner in my works there. I hadn't thought about digital copies and how that would. I think the way we're doing, we're doing as part of the print run. All our creators are getting copies to be able to sell at cons. Plus,
good.
We'll give them a heads up if we're going to do like reprints, so they can get in at cost. So if we're like, if we're going to do, guys, we're going to do a run of 100. Does anybody want copies? They can be part of the order, which is obviously going to work out much cheaper.
Yep. We're doing the same thing.
Digital. I hadn't thought about digital. The way that we're paying our creative team is, it's like it's proportionate to the profit. So like if I'm going to work out a percentage of, if you contribute 12% of the anthology, you'll get 12% of the pay of any profit that comes from it. So that's probably what I'll do digitally as well. Like just have to be like, it'll be paid like a dividend, I think, or something like that. Like a little
royalty. Yeah, and this is a really good question, and it's a question we have to answer. If we sell the book either digitally or physical copies through, say, a website, we should compensate the creators, like Greg, for like give them a little percentage, like a royalty. So we need to figure out what that's going to look like, what the percentages are, and all that stuff. So it's an ongoing conversation. It's something we need to figure out, like after the Kickstarter is done. But we'll get there.
It's all learning,
and obviously. Obviously, the marketplace is going to be the big question too. Physically, there's a few different options as far as setting up big cartel stores or Etsy stores or what have you. Digital is a huge problem in comics right now. Obviously, I don't have to tell you either of you about the Comixology debacle of the past 4 or 5 months, but. Yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious about Comic House that you mentioned. I'm going to check them out later on, and maybe that would be a good outlet for.
I personally love it. You can get a couple of my comics on Comic House. The idea is like they do it on a proportionate basis, where it's like they take in everybody's, like it's quite cheap. It's like £3 a month, which is about $4 or $5. And then you have access to thousands of comics, and I think the idea is like they take a note of how many, they've got a way of monitoring how many times each comic is read, and then they'll take all their profits and then divvy it up amongst contributors. So if you post a comic and it gets read, again, like say like you put a comic up and 10% of everybody that read a comic that month read your comic, you'll get 10% of the profit, or like a percentage proportion.
Interesting.
It's quite interesting. I've never been paid by them. You've had my comics on them for 2 years, but that's but I don't know. I don't know how many people are. I don't know how many subscribers they've got, and I don't know how many. I don't know how many times my books have been read. So, but I do know like Colin and David, who are two of my co-hosts, and also have books on on Comics House. Sorry. They have received payments, but they're just probably better creators than I am. So yeah, if your book's amazing, your book's amazing, and it's well received and it's well marketed, you'll probably do quite well at the Comic House.
I'll look into it. Yeah, I'll add it to my list. Yeah, we need to come up with a solution in not too long, so I'll definitely look into that.
No worries. Okay, guys, we're just coming up for an hour, so I'll let you go. Thank you so much for joining me. Have you got any other things you would like to plug or chat about before we shoot off? Is there anything you've read that you're like, yeah, we need to check that out? Is there anything that you have done? Just take a couple of minutes just to plug everything.
Do you want me to start, Greg, or you want to
go? You can go ahead. Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay, so like I was saying, we have 3 days left on the Tales from the Cloakroom Kickstarter. If any listeners are interested, please check us out. Please support us. We appreciate your support. We've hit all of our stretch goals, thank goodness, which pays our creators back. Actually, each stretch goal increases the page rate. But, if you want to get the book, it's going to be out there. And we got 3 days left. Me personally, if you want to follow me, I'm on Twitter, Ben O'Grady, BenOgrady. And I'm going to start getting into a couple of my own personal projects a little bit later this year, like things I'm working on, sort of early scripts phases now. But you can follow like what I'm doing in comics on my Twitter. And then, like when the book comes out, like please check out all those creators. Check out Greg's stuff. His story is amazing. Check out all of our other great writers.
I will plug my website. I am at Ritual83, RITUAL 83.RIP. As you can probably imagine from that, I am mostly a horror writer. So up on the website, I have links to all my social media stuff. I also have a free 6-page comic book, which you can read. It's a one and done horror story. In addition to that, don't really have much else to plug aside from, I guess, recently I read James Tynion's The Nice House by the Lake, the first volume of it, which is absolutely fantastic. Yes, check that out if you have not read that already. And on the prose side of things, I just finished the Blood Red Turns Dollar Green trilogy, which I'm forgetting the author's name, but it is a crime drama set in the world of 1970s to 1980s territorial professional wrestling world. So it's it's a crime drama set in like sort of like the NWA basically, like WWF, pre WCW. So check those out. It's really, really, really cool book. Set of books actually.
Yeah. I'm going to make a note of that. That sounds kind of amazing.
We the rest of the hosts will be laughing right now because we somehow can't ever get through an interview or a podcast without talking about professional wrestling. Yeah. So thank you very much, Greg.
Well, if you ever do a pro wrestling sub podcast, invite me on because I got a lot to say.
I might take you up on that, man. I might take you up on that.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch up with you really soon. Everyone just needs to check out the Tales of the Cloakroom Kickstarter.
Yep.
I'll have a couple of days. The link is right here. It's smashing. It's cool. It's probably the most to be quite honest, it's probably one of the more successful Kickstarters we've ever had on the podcast. So congratulations, and it does look amazing, and I imagine it will be amazing. And I look forward to seeing more. So well done, guys, and thank you so much for joining us. So thanks everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure.